Welcome to Green Publishing, Green Audiences, Green Titles, Green Printing. My name is Shel Horowitz, and I am from goingbeyondsustainability.com. I'm also the author of 10 books and the publisher of 5 of those, and have been a consultant to many authors and publishers over the last 25 years or so. So you will learn perhaps quite a bit of information here. It's going to be pretty fast-paced. And the good news is at the end I'll tell you how to get a copy of the slides. So anything you miss, you can refer to and review as many times as you like. So let's start with green audiences, okay? People think often that it's really kind of a small and marginal part of the book publishing world, but in fact it's growing enormously. I did this webinar in 2016, and then I updated it to do it again for you, and I was amazed at the growth. Searches on Google for books about the environment, 186,000 in 1986. 2 years later, 23,800,000. For green business, it had been 23,437, and now it's 1,670,000. For green living, it has gone all the way from 10,466 up to 1,000,002. And for children's books about the environment, there were only 6,361 of them 2 years ago, and now there are 920,000. So this is growing beyond what anybody could have predicted. I want to talk to you about how to structure your message to reach 3 types of green audiences. Many times when we think about marketing green, we think only about marketing to the deeply committed greens. People like me, people who wake up every morning and think about how they're going to live their life in a way more in harmony with the environment. They make a lot of purchasing choices and a lot of other kinds of decisions based on how they feel it relates to the problems of climate change and the need to protect the planet. Those are the ones that most people market to when they try to market green products and services. But here's the interesting thing. You can reach 2 completely other kinds of audiences as well. One of those are what I call the lazy greens. Now, the person I think of when I think of the lazy green is I think about my mother-in-law who lives in New York and has her Queen's accent, so I will pretend to be able to do that well. And I told her at one point that I was visiting the Markel paper plant, which is an all-recycled toilet paper company in New Jersey, just outside New York City. And she says to me, "I always buy Markel because it's recycled." But she's a lazy green, not a deep green. She always buys Markel because it's right next to all the other brands in the supermarket she's already going to. And then you've got the non-greens. They're either indifferent to the green message or they're actively hostile. These are the people that might drive their Hummer a quarter mile to buy something at the convenience store rather than walking. And for them, the interesting thing is you can get them to buy green products and services, including books. We'll talk a little bit more about how to do that later. But for right now, just keep in the back of your head that you can do this. You don't have to settle for just the 20 or 30 or 40% that are the deep greens. And interestingly enough, no matter what sector you're in, there are cool green products. So for example, Tesla, this was one of their first models, the Roadster, and now they've got sedans, but still, I was just looking at one at a sustainability fair yesterday that offered 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. And that's kind of the secret of how you sell to the non-green. You look at the features, whether it's durability, performance, comfort, all of those kinds of things will go beyond just the green audience if you can get people to see that the other choices are better. And you may even be able to do a little education with them about the reason it's better is because of the green features. I mean, anybody who's ever driven a sports car would love to get to 60 miles an hour from 0 in 3 seconds flat. So if you are slammed against the seat feeling those G's, you're not necessarily going to care that it's an electric motor that's getting you there. You just want the thrill of the speed. So that's how Tesla can sell to people who are not particularly green. We, as people providing products and services in the information category, that is to say books, we have to think about what is in our books that would appeal to people regardless of whether they're green or not. So if you're teaching somebody how to live their life better, or how to do something more efficiently, or how to make more money because it's green, they'll listen. My own books, for example, include Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green, which came out back in 2010 and then has pretty much been replaced by Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World. In those books, I show how it is profitable to create products and services that make the world better. I'm not saying do it because it's the right thing to do. I'm saying do it because your company will benefit. I mentioned Markel a minute ago and my mother-in-law. This is an example of their packaging. You'll see that they make a really big deal about being green. You see that on the right, 100% premium recycled. You can help save 1 million trees. A little environmental facts panel modeled after the nutrition facts that are on all food labels. And even on the left-hand side, you can see in somewhat smaller print, saving trees since 1950, which was the year they went to 100% recycled. They make their toilet paper, by the way, out of New York City's junk mail. And underneath it says, a small, easy step to a greener earth. They've really been building this small steps brand. This is a company that went bankrupt in the first decade of this century. And they got out of bankruptcy by owning this proud heritage. If you looked at their packaging in, say, the 1960s, there wasn't a word about it being recycled. And then suddenly they brought in a turnaround specialist who said, hey, we are sitting on a gold mine here. We have this record of having been recycled for decades. We're doing the right thing long before it was fashionable. Let's capitalize on that. So they went from bankruptcy to being the largest selling brand of recycled paper, toilet paper, household paper products in the country. And that's really interesting because they're a regional brand. They're not like Seventh Generation that's all over the country. They're pretty much only Northeast. This is the box of a cereal called Familia. It comes from Switzerland. And again, this was a company that was early to the game in terms of doing the right thing, but kind of late in telling people about it. As recently as 2010, the word organic did not even appear on their cereal boxes. Now it does. So they're learning. They're learning these are marketing advantages. In the building sphere, the building on the left is the main conference room at the Montague Retreat Center. It is a very green building. It is both solar and geothermal, and a lot of cool green features. It's a retrofit of an old barn on a farm. And interestingly enough, they were a client of mine, and I did a marketing plan for them based not only on the greenness of their buildings, but also on their incredible history. As it happens that the hippie farm commune that really birthed the safe energy movement in the United States was living on this farm, which was a few owners ago. So I did a marketing plan all about going after the people for whom that would be really special, for whom it would be hallowed ground to walk there. Of course, you all recognize the Empire State Building on the right. What's the Empire State Building doing on a slide about green buildings, you ask? The Empire State Building was built in 1931 when oil was almost free. I'm sure they didn't care much about how much energy they were using, and you're right. But here's the thing. The Empire State Building several years ago hired some high-level consultants to come in and do what's called a deep energy retrofit. They took out all the windows, they took out all the heating controls, they replaced all this stuff. They actually took one floor of the building and made it into a window remanufacturing shop. They took the old windows and freshened them up, added insulation, added extra glass, changed, I think, the kind of material that was between the layers. And anyway, it was a $13 million project. It wasn't cheap, but oh my goodness. Every year they are saving $4 million on their energy bills. That is a 33% ROI, and that is pretty darn good. So here are two things to keep in mind when you're doing your green messaging. One is if you put out messages that are both about self-interest and planetary interest, that's when you hook the deep greens and the lazy greens. And then if you make going green better in some way than the alternative, then you can get even the non-greens, even the ones who are hostile to the idea. Because if they can get more of what they came for, they'll come. So let's now look at a few actual books in the green book sphere. I picked a bunch, more or less at random, of evergreen books. If you're not familiar with the term evergreen, it means an old book that keeps on selling. And there's quite a number of them in the very broad category of green books. The ones that I've picked, the earliest one is from 1962. The most recent one is from 2015, and they are all still doing quite well in 2018. So we're going to review This Changes Everything, Silent Spring, Cradle to Cradle, Biomimicry, Why Should I Recycle, Apple Cider Vinegar, and Rodau's Basic Organic Gardening. I want you to pay attention as we go through to the stats. These are all slides from Amazon. So you'll see Amazon sales ranks overall, and you'll also see Amazon sales ranks in their top 3 categories. So we'll start with Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate. This is a book for activists on why things are a mess and what to do about it. And here you go. You can see that in 2016, when I last did this webinar, it was doing quite well. It was just over 1,000 in overall rank. It had 2 number 1s and 1 number 2. That was when it had been out most of a year. Okay. In 2018, it's not doing quite as well, but it's still extremely respectable. It is still in the top 20,000 overall. It is number 9 in one category, number 13 in another, and number 16 in another. Those are very, very, very good numbers. Here's a classic from 1962. This is, I believe, the 2002 cover. This is Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Yeah, that was the 50th anniversary edition, so actually that would be 2012. And this one really launched awareness about pesticides, about what we were doing to our natural environment. It's a very famous book in the green world. And here we are 60 years later, more than 60 years later, 66 years later. It's 2,354 overall. It has 2 number 2s and 1 number 3. In a book that's older than I am. Sorry. Math was never my good subject. In a book that came out when I was in, I think, 1st grade. Cradle to Cradle is a book about green manufacturing. It's really kind of a techie book. It's not designed particularly for lay people. It's not super inaccessible, but it's not the easiest read you'll ever come across. And not a book you'd necessarily expect to do well. You can see the cover is somewhat less than gorgeous. And yet, came out in 2002, and in 2018 it is still in the top 20,000 overall. And on its 3 lists, it's in the top 10 on all of them. This book also came out that same year. And it's a book about how nature inspires engineering. And in fact, in my own book, Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, I have a section based on the work of Janine Benyus and other biomimicrists called Mother Nature Chief Engineer. Once again, 2002 publication, so a little later in the year, so this is 15 and a half years. Once again, in the top 20,000 and almost in the top 15,000 overall. And 2 lists in the top 25 and 1 in the top 100. This is a kid's book, Why Should I Recycle? It came out in 2005. It's only 32 pages long. In 2016, this is really interesting. Pay attention to this slide and the next slide. In 2016, it was at 56,000, and it had 1 list in the top 10 and all 3 in the top 100. Now, look what happened 2 years later. Kaboom. It has gone all the way to number 658 overall, not category. There are fewer than 700 books in the world selling better than this on Amazon. It has 3 number 1 categories, and these are not children's book categories. These are the overall category of earth science or engineering or ecology. So this book, just as overall the green market has been jumping in the last 2 years, this book is a particularly sexy example of what's going on in that market. Now this is a funny one. This book has been in print for decades. It's got a cover that I consider absolutely hideous and that I feel violates pretty much every good principle of cover design. All the things that we tell our self-publishing clients not to do, this book did in its cover. So how's it doing? Well, it's in its 59th edition. That says something right there. That edition is now 10 years old. It is overall ranked just under 6,000. It has a number 8, a number 18, and a number 39. So all of its 3 top categories, it's in the top 50 for that category, despite its hideous cover. You only wonder what it might have been selling if it had had a decent cover. And this is from a small, no-name publisher / natural food maker called Bragg's. They have, not only do they do the book, but they have cider vinegar, and they have a non-wheat soy sauce. And so this is a sideline for them, and yet it continues to do extremely well. I certainly have never had any of my books go into 59 editions. And Rodal's Basic Organic Gardening. This book is for beginners who want to garden organically. Okay, Rodal, if you know anything about their history as a publisher, they go back to, I think, the 1940s with books about homesteading and gardening with a definite tilt toward organic. They publish magazines in that space, they publish books, and they know what they're doing, and they really, the market knows them. If you're looking for a book in that space, Rodal is a publisher that's more likely to make you stop and say, hey, maybe I should look at this one. So this one was published in 2014. It is a medium, still on the good side of things at a 38,410 overall ranking and 2 in the top 100. And again, this book is 4 years old. So this one is maybe more typical of what we publishers who don't happen to win the lottery with a book like Why Should I Recycle might expect, that we can have mid-range sales, strong after years and years, and establish a loyal following that we can then sell other stuff to. So those are the books I wanted to showcase and their stats. And now, let's just remind ourselves of the range of topics within the overall category of green publishing. So this changes everything. It was an economics book that also dipped quite a bit into climate science. Silent Spring was about the effects of pesticides. Cradle to Cradle is about zero waste manufacturing. Why Should I Recycle is a kid's how-to picture book. Biomimicry is about design principles from nature. Apple cider vinegar is part of the enormous universe of books in health and wellness. And Rodal's Basic Organic Gardening, of course, is about gardening. So pretty much anything you can think to write and publish about, there's a green angle. There are books in green construction, green waste management, green lifestyles, disease control, green burials, and on and on and on. As Seinfeld would say, yada, yada, yada. Or as the king in The King and I would say, etc., etc., etc. So now let's move on to green printing. This is something, whether you're publishing green titles or not, this affects you. When I did my book with Wiley, Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green, I said to them, because of the subject matter, we really have to have recycled paper. And they said, yeah, you're right, and we're going to do you one better. We're going to give you not just recycled, but forest stewardship certified recycled. The Forest Stewardship Council is the #1 certifying body for appropriate use of tree products. So that was a big deal, and I was very glad they did it. Because whether or not you're publishing green titles, if you want to go after a green audience and if you want to say to them, we are doing the right thing for the earth, there are certain steps you have to take. We're going to go through 4 of those steps right now. So first, you want to walk your talk. Now, you've probably heard of David Bach. He's a well-known financial guru. He's written a ton of books. He has big publishers. This particular one is from Random House. Go Green, Live Rich, 50 Simple Ways to Save the Earth and Get Rich Trying. Published in 2008. But here's the thing, he didn't walk his talk, or his publisher didn't walk his talk. The book is full of full-color, coated stock, very expensive to produce, I'm sure, and with the use of a lot of lead and cadmium is my guess, and it doesn't fit the message. It's totally at odds with the message of being a green living person and making money doing it. So I wonder who in Random House thought this was a good idea. Now, to produce a book green, first of all, you want to look at print run. You don't want to do those tens of thousands of copies that David Bach's publisher did. I'm a big believer in publishing as you need them, and then you're never sitting on a big ton of wasted inventory, which for us publishers is not only an environmental issue, but also a cost issue and a storage issue, and a whole lot of reasons to avoid. So now, in his case, with all those full color printing pictures inside, they really didn't have any choice but a large run. It would have been $40 a book if they had done it on demand. But most of us are doing books with a color cover, but the interior is black and white, or maybe there's a small section of color. And for those books, we can really tailor our ordering to demand. So I tell a lot of my clients, okay, if you've pre-sold 2,000 copies, then do 2,100, so you have some on sale on hand for the immediate use. And when you get down to the last 20 or so, 30, whatever, then order more, but don't order another 2,000 unless you've got really huge demand that you know is going to continue. Because these days you can get books in just a few days. So there's no reason to allow yourself to build up these huge, expensive, wasteful inventories, and then things change and you're sitting on wasted stock. Print on demand also allows you to do custom covers for bulk purchases by corporations and organizations. This is something that our host Brian Judd is one of the experts on. In fact, he's done his own book on selling outside of the bookstore channel, and this is a big part of what he talks about is getting companies to buy your book in quantity. You can offer them a cover that is just for them. It can say, Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, brought to you by corporate name, or special edition for the customers of corporate name. You will pay more per book, and of course, old-fashioned economics has you looking at that, well, if I can get a book for $2 a copy if I'm printing 5,000 of them, then why should I pay $4 a copy to get them 10 at a time? But again, you still have to lay out that huge capital. If you're doing thousands of copies of a book times $2, then you're doing 2 times thousands worth of dollars for inventory. You may or may not have the good distribution channels to get them out. You may or may not have the sales messages that's getting people to grab that book and take it home or order it online. So I am a big believer in very conservative ordering. We have the technology now where you can get a book done for a very reasonable cost in an edition of 1. There was one book that I shepherded through that was a vanity project for a family member of mine, and we did 6 copies total. I didn't waste an ISBN on that one, but that's all we needed to do. You have no storage cost, and in fact, you're typically not dealing with the shipping. If you're dealing with Lightning Source, CreateSpace, or any of the other printers that can give you on demand, you tell them where the book is going, and they send it directly to that recipient, and you do not have to ever handle that book. And the other nice thing about this is in the old days, you might have 10 warehouses from Amazon or from Ingram or wherever, ordering 2 copies apiece. And then they run out of copies in one warehouse, and meanwhile another warehouse is sending them back to you and you're paying the freight. So nobody's making any money on that part of the system. You've got books that are arriving typically tattered and not able to be sold for full retail. You've got people not having the books they need. All of this, you say goodbye when you go to on-demand printing. So that's a huge advantage for publishers. Okay, we talked about recycled paper stock and Forest Stewardship Council certified paper stock. You can get paper that isn't even from trees. I actually know a guy who does art papers made out of elephant dung. I am not kidding. There are many, many options for non-tree paper made sometimes from other plants like cotton or flax or other substances entirely. The book Cradle to Cradle, which is one of the books I highlighted, is made out of some kind of durable plastic that the idea is that this book will never have to be thrown away because it wears out because it's kind of permanent. That, in my mind, may have not been the best choice, except that they were demonstrating the feasibility of this, and there might be books that are more archival in their content. I would think that this book is going to have to be updated every few years, and therefore it was an odd choice to me, but that's how they did it. Now, ink is a bone of contention. I have a printer friend who says that soy ink is actually less environmentally friendly than petroleum-based inks. And he basically says, why should you take a food product and take it out of the food system when you could be taking waste products from petroleum and keeping them out of the landfill? There's a lot of debate on this. When you request your copy of my slides, you will get this page of URLs, and you can do your own due diligence and decide what you think the right answer is. I am not going to say to you that I have the right answer. I'm just going to say to you, do your research. So now, my brand is going beyond sustainability, and the idea of that is that sustainability isn't enough. We've spent the first 27 minutes talking about sustainability, about going green. But really, I want you to see going green as the first step. I want you to see that you as a publisher, you as an information supplier, you as a business owner can actually make a difference, can actually address problems like hunger or poverty or war or catastrophic climate change, and do it in a way that makes the world not just the same but better. Sustainability is keeping things as they are. Regenerativity is making them better. The interesting thing is that when you look at things like hunger and poverty and war and catastrophic climate change, and I have taken this look, and I actually have another whole presentation called Impossible as a Dare that really focuses on this, they're resource issues. When people fight wars, it's because somebody wants somebody else's land or somebody else's oil or somebody else's water. When you talk about hunger and poverty, the connection with resources is much more obvious. And when you talk about climate change, from shifting from the fossil and nuclear-based economy to renewable, unlimited supply of energy, and shifting the food system from chemiculture to ample, organic, healthy, grown near the point of consumption types of food, then all of these things become solvable. I'm not going to go into the details of how. As I said, that's an entire other presentation, but there's a lot of information in my own latest book, Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, my TEDx talk, Impossible as a Dare, and the other places I've given that talk as well. Now, I know this can be scary and overwhelming and like, where do I start? How am I going to do this? I'm here to help. I can help you in a lot of different ways. I can consult with you on what kinds of titles could green your title list, where are the good niches, where are the places you want to be acquiring and marketing new books, how you can form win-win partnerships with whom and how they'll work, what the green market is like and how you might think about going into it, and strategic planning for individual books, as well as copywriting all the marketing materials that you need to enter this market or to do well in any market. I am very, very happy to help. Now I've got some gifts for you for staying to the end of this call. They're all at goingbeyondsustainability.com/freebies. And one of the things that is not on the slide but is there is you can actually watch the TEDx talk I just referred to, Impossible as a Dare, which is how this work looked in 2014 when I was just really kind of getting into it, and it has evolved since then. And then finally, if you would like to get a copy of the slides, you can write to me at shel@greenandprofitable.com, and that's S like Sam, H-E-L, and is spelled out, Shel with one L, at greenandprofitable.com. You can also tweet me at S like Sam, HELHOROWITZ, Shel Horowitz. Or give me a call at 413-586-2388. I'm happy to take your call, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And that's also how to get in touch with me, those three ways: email, Twitter, or telephone, if you would like to talk to me about consulting, speaking, or writing for you. And thank you so much for spending this half an hour with me.